Today I'm going to talk about Squarespace, our processes, our visual language, and our culture. Excuse me because I arrived yesterday and the guys also arrived yesterday, so we are all a little bit jet lagged. And so if I forget something, please do ask afterwards if you have any questions. So as Luca mentioned, I'm working at Five as a design director. And also I'm working at Squarespace as a product designer and a motion designer. Okay? And for you who don't know what Squarespace is, Squarespace is a website publishing tool that was developed 11 years ago by Anthony Casalina. And now it employs more than 500 people, and every day, millions of websites are being published on that platform. So it's become one of the biggest website publishing tool nowadays. And as Luca mentioned, the whole story with Squarespace started 2 years ago. They approached us because they wanted to redesign their note-taking app for Android. And they had some expertise designing mobile web and designing mobile apps, but they didn't know how to approach the Android platform. And this is how I got involved. I had a lot of experience designing for iOS and designing for Android. So for you who are not familiar with the Note app, basically it's a really, really simple note-taking app. And in design terms, it's around 10 screens, something like that. So if I would estimate how much time it would take to design that app, it would be around a week, possibly. But it took me around a month to design it. And everybody in the agency was all constantly asking me why this is taking so long. And I was asking when it's going to be the launch date. And the answer that I got was that we are going to release it when we are satisfied. And this is a really unusual answer. And what it means that we're going to release it when I'm satisfied with the design and the developer is satisfied with the code. Meaning that it could have lasted, I don't know, a year, 2 years, who knows. But it took us around 4 months to build it. And this is something that I wasn't used to doing in the agency. And I think that the best illustrates how Squarespace works. So I want to talk to you about the processes that go in there and the visual language that we are developing, and mostly about the culture. Because I feel, I know probably most of you worked in an agency and some of you worked on a product, but the culture in Squarespace is quite different than we can encounter here in Croatia. And first of all, I want to talk about the process, but I don't want to talk about wireframes and prototyping and stuff like that, because I want to talk to you about stuff that is more specific for Squarespace. And one of the unique things that we do is something that is called a hack week. And for you who are not familiar what a hack week is, basically it's a 5-day period that we take off from our duties, meaning that we get a free week. We don't need to do anything, meaning that I can stay at home if I want to. But we don't stay at home, and we do explore different ideas, different gadgets. And after some times, we have some time to figure out what we want to do. And this is the first project that I did for a hack week. So basically, it's a Android launcher thing. So an Android launcher is a reskin of the whole Android iOS, meaning that I had to do like hundreds of icons for every app to redesign that. And I worked with these two guys. One is Ryan Quintal, and the other guy on the right is David Lee. Ryan is a product designer as myself, but David is the chief design director at Squarespace. And the first thing that David said when I arrived at Squarespace were these two sentences. And he wanted to emphasize how much design is important for the whole process, and he wanted to empower me to think about what I want to bring to our users. And the main thought behind these two sentences is that I should empower users to bring good design, because most of them don't know what good design is, but we should give them a tool so they can build things that look really, really good. And after 4 days, we meet up in an open forum and present those ideas and projects. And then we vote on the stuff that we did. So most of these ideas never come to life, but some of those ideas are quite finished and almost ready to be implemented in the final product. And there are some ideas that become product by themselves. I'll mention later on how that comes to life. I want to give you a quick example. It's not always like digital products. Sometimes it's hardware, like this lamp on the far left. Basically, it's a lamp that changes color during the day. And also, it's a good opportunity to meet up with the people that we work remotely and work with in a more casual way. And the other thing that is quite unique for Squarespace are offsites. I don't know if anyone of you ever went on an offsite and what an offsite is. Well, basically, an offsite, it's a 2-day, 3-day meeting that it takes away from our office, and we usually rent a place. We did something similar here in Croatia with the agency team. We rented the Lauba for a day, and we took off and discussed stuff. And in Squarespace, basically it's a period, a summer round, when we end a project and we start to work on a new project. And it's a good opportunity to think about the stuff that we did good, the stuff that we did bad. And to give you an example, for the first part of the first day, we just take a bunch of Post-its and write down the questions that we think we need to get the answers to. And then we group those questions into groups that we take and try to find the answers. And the whole point is to find actionable items that we're going to implement later on in our process. Because there are some stuff that we sometimes do really, really bad and want to improve always. And there's some that we do really good and want to continue in that. And that's the main key feature behind an offsite, to find stuff that we can implement on later on in the process. And the second thing I want to talk is how it's to build a product and about our visual language. I think that's the most interesting stuff here, because you're mostly designers. So the main idea is something that this guy said, and how did it work. For you who don't know who this guy is, this is Dieter Rams. Dieter was a product designer at Brown, and he designed really minimalistic products, physical products. And this is stuff that's mostly Apple is inspired by his design. I don't know if you're familiar, but look it up and you'll see how much Apple took from this guy. And he said some smart things about design, but I won't read all of this. Basically, I want to concentrate on the last sentence, that good design is as little design as possible. Meaning, if you strip down your design, you'll end up with something that's really unobtrusive and really easy to understand. And this is basically the points that he wanted to have about design and product design. And we feel that digital products are almost like physical products. And I think this image best illustrates the thinking behind when we wanted to build the interface for Squarespace. So basically, it's an empty canvas on which we want to have as a product, so the users can bring their own design and bring their own creativity on it. And Squarespace should be something that's never obtrusive, never louder than your brand. And this is the philosophy that's behind Squarespace 7. And I will talk mostly about philosophy because in our process, we don't have like a boss or somebody that's telling us what to do. We have mostly free hands. But it's the most important thing is to keep in mind that philosophy so we can build similar stuff and to go to the same goal. And I'll talk about a little bit how Squarespace 7 basically is the last generation of Squarespace. And as you can see, it's really, really simple. We wanted the web page to be first, and the CMS is something that's behind your web page, something that's really accessible. And we wanted to have the web constantly showing so you can always preview the changes that you are doing. And working with the CMS is quite easy because anyone that never could have done a web page can just edit it because it's quite similar to a PowerPoint presentation or something like that, because you can just click on a text and just edit it. And what we were thinking a lot was how we're gonna structure this left column. So basically, the left column is structured in a way that the easiest tools, the things that are essential, are firstly shown, and then if you go into much deeper that, then you can get more complicated stuff. Because we feel that the complicated stuff, it's not for everyone. And then we want to take those principles and bring them to the mobile. And as you can see, we have a lot of mobile apps that we developed the period of 5 years. And as you can see, they are all quite similar. And although they were built 5 years ago, they still look really modern because we never took in account some trends and styles. We always try to keep in mind that philosophy, how a product should work. And there are some things that we pick up as trends, but there are some stuff that we take as basic principles. And we build our UIs with something that is called atomic design. Probably most of you know what is it, and some of you do it and never realize that you're doing it. But the atomic design is basically you take smaller chunks of atoms, then you build up molecules from which you can build organisms, and then that becomes a style sheet. And to explain a little bit more, atoms are the basic constructs of your design, meaning typography, colors, and stuff like that. I just want to show this because everybody thinks that in Squarespace we use just black and shades of gray. But we do use colors, and we have a large color palette. But we try to use color in a smart way, because we think that, let's say you have everything is really gray, and you put a tiny red dot somewhere, you'll really get the effect that you get from color, using color. And from those atoms, then you build up molecules, which are smaller UI elements. And with those elements, you build up a screen. And as you can see, this is the commerce app. We launched this app 2 days ago. And as you can see, these two screens are quite similar, although they were designed by 2 different designers. And they're similar in a style, but they're different in a way that some elements are arranged. And we always try to think about the patterns that our users used to on a different platform, and try to bring that in our design. But as you can see, somebody mentioned before the hamburger menu there. Well, this is something that is going to change. But at that time, we were never thinking like, what are the iOS style guides and the Android style guides are, but we were thinking like, what is our style and what works for Squarespace? And in that particular example, a hamburger menu is 100% dead on to be there on the iOS platform. Because there are no navigation patterns behind that, are mostly settings and stuff like that that we don't need to surface that much. And we wanted to have the user be focused into inventory and the order fulfillment. But yeah, as you can see, it's really, really simple. And my whole point is, as we take a lot of time to think about design, these guys take a lot of time to work on their part. This is the mobile development team, and they take a lot of care about what we design, and they have a lot of ideas and inputs, because we feel that developers are also designers, and they're an intricate part of what the main user experience is. And for me, user experience is not just a part of a design team or a design phase. For me, the user experience is something, it's the final product and your brand. And this is something that's made up from every team and component that takes care of this, because if you, let's say, have a great design and have everything tested in a prototype, if it's not implemented good, then the user experience will be really, really bad. And it works both ways. Also, if you have a great development team, if the design is really bad, then probably won't work that well. And in the end, everything is by the management who directs the timetables and the time that you can spend on the design and development, and also what culture they bring into those teams, how everybody thinks, should they direct them to go in a similar way. And this is, I think, the most important part that I'm going to talk today are the values that we share at Squarespace. As I said, Squarespace has a more flat structure. We don't have like bosses, something like that. I mean, we have managers and roles, but there's like, from a day-to-day basis, on my job, I don't have somebody telling me what I need to do. It's basic, I have free hands. And these values are the things that guide us all to go in the same direction. And one of these things is that you should be your own customer, meaning that every one of us uses Squarespace on a daily basis. We have our own blogs and stores there, and we use it every day. Meaning that if there's a glitch or a bug or something, we pick it up before our users pick it up, because, as I said, we use it every day and test it a lot. And this is something that you should always, if you're working on a product or even a project, you should always try to think in terms how you would use the app and stuff like that. The other thing is to empower individuals. As I said, we are a group, but we also work as individuals, and we have our own voices, and always try to work on the things that we think should be the best path for Squarespace. And I'll give you an example, because I know these sentences are really vague, and I'll try to keep them as concrete as I can. So, as an example, during a hack week, there was a girl. Basically, during hack weeks, we work in groups of 2 or 3 people maximum. And this girl worked alone, and what she did, she basically designed a button. And to get the background of her story, she receives every day a bunch of tickets, which then she needs to transfer into tasks. So she needs to copy a lot of text into input fields and stuff like that. And what she did for those 5 days, she developed that button. When you would press it on a ticket, it would pre-fill all the necessary input fields. And it took her around a minute or two to do that for each every one ticket. And now, now she saves up those 2 minutes, and to just put things into perspective, Squarespace receives around 5 or 6 tickets per minute. So she saved up around 400 working days in a year. So I think she made them a lot of money during those 5 days. And you can think how much of her 5 days brought value to the company. And it paid up, basically the hack week, it paid up that everybody was not doing anything for those 5 days. And this is the main thing about empowering individuals, that just, if you're a group, working in a group, let people think by themselves and express themselves and bring their own voices, because a lot of you are designers and developers, and a lot of you constantly think what design should be and how things should be developed. And very, very often, especially here where we work in an agency, those voices don't get heard. And the core thing about Squarespace is design, and we always think that design is not a luxury, and it should be the core thing of your product and projects, meaning that don't build up design after development. And as an example, I wanted to bring up what Aaron did for Hack Week. Basically, Aaron is a iOS developer, and he worked on a project, and we didn't know on what he was working on. And on a Friday, when he presented what he developed, we figured that besides that it was a great idea, the design was something that we as designers would have designed it. And this is how our developers are always constantly thinking what is design and how design should work. And although Aaron built that in a week, it's taking us now a year and a half to develop it. So, because we wanted to have a lot of time to take all the details and then just go through iterations and find the best way to deal with that app. And this is something that I learned from these guys. This is the product design team. We have different teams that deal with design. We have a front-end design team, a back-end design team, content design team, and then we have the product design team. And what I learned from them is to take my own time and really think about design and polish my own design, because with a marketing and agency background, I'm always rushing and trying to finish up things as much as possible as I can. But from them I learned just to really, really take my time and think about it. And meaning that although Aaron can build that in a week, he will never see that the whole presentation that I made was slightly off-centered. And he'll never get why I would do such a mistake all through a presentation to make a point. Because design is more than just drawing screens and stuff like that. It's more thinking about what's the message that you're trying to send to other people. And polishing your app and polishing those details sends out the message that you have something that it's perfect. And making perfect things is also bringing that design to its bare essentials and bare minimals, and to simplify things. And we go back into the thing that I was talking at the beginning. So try to strip down everything so you get that product that's really easy to use and really easy to understand. And although we always think as designers that we know the best stuff, we always try to optimize and read about metrics and stuff like that. And to give you an example, on the commerce app that I mentioned before, me as a UI designer and a UI point of view, I was always thinking that we have two screens on that app. One is inventory that has pre-filled inventory items, and the other screen, it's basically an empty screen with your orders. After you receive an order, that screen is mostly empty. And for me, I always was thinking that the inventory should be something that we would show first, but in the end, the metrics showed us that the orders screen is something that the users mostly use. So although it doesn't look that good when you open it up and you see an empty screen, we feel that's the main screen that the user should use. And there are some things that I brought into Squarespace. As I was working in an agency parallel with the stuff that I was working on the product, I saw some things that they weren't doing good in their processes, and I wanted and I did bring some stuff from the agency. And what we do is, in the industry, we do prototype a lot and test everything. While on Squarespace, we usually prototype everything on the beginning, and somewhere, I don't know, 5 or 6 months later in the process, we never took the time to prototype new features and test them. We went to development, which proved us really, really costly iterating during that process. And now we are starting to prototype and test even more during that period. So there's no line of code done before we test everything. And what we do in the agency is we do design sprints. This is something that Tim is gonna talk to you later on. But this is basically a week to make a prototype and then test that prototype. And this is something that we started to do, is just gather all the stakeholders, meaning developers and the people from the management team, and then take that week to define the stuff that we're gonna build later on. And it's a great way to bring all the developers together and the management, and then discuss things before we even start designing and developing. Oh. And also unifying everything with a style guide. Basically, for the agency, we always have a style guide because we have different designers doing design on the same project, and this is something that I wanted to bring in Squarespace because they have multiple designers working on a project. And now we are trying to build that style guide so everybody keeps in mind the typography, the grid systems, to unify that more. Meaning that I'm not trying to bring some rules in it, but just to have some more direction while working on it. And for some final thoughts, I want you just to think about this stuff, that your culture is your product. Meaning that although everything was developed by Anthony in the beginning, he still developed something, as he is now the CEO, but he still develops some stuff. But there's 500 people working for him, and what's the main product? It's not the Squarespace product by itself. It's the people that build that product. And this is, I think, the biggest accomplishment that he did, is to bring that culture and bring that philosophy into Squarespace, which enabled all those people to do that product. And the other thing is that the user experience is your brand. Meaning that although you think as something that people are using your app, people usually tend to identify your product with your brand. Meaning that if you have a great product, people will probably tend to associate your brand with your product. And this is a little bit change on the sentence, "You are what you think." I think that was Buddha. And the idea is that you are what you consume, because the thoughts that we have are probably the things that we picked up from somewhere else. And you should always be surrounded by people from who you can learn, and trying to teach everybody and try to communicate even more. Also try to read as much as you can, follow trends, read about on trends, but don't follow them to the letter, and try to find your own language. And I mean, the 4 points that sum up this presentation is that design is essential, and you should build those core values and your culture, and that will reflect into your projects and your product. And really take time and polish those details, and in the end, simplify things, because the world is really a complicated place, and we don't want to complicate it anymore. So, thank you. If you have any questions.
How many different types of businesses are you designing solutions for, and do you find that there, over time, that you've actually had to make accommodations in the product to suit the needs of different types of businesses?
Well, Squarespace was first of all, they were concentrated on portfolios and blogs. And now basically we have 3 products. One of the product is our cover pages, the other one are websites, and the other one is a commerce platform. Basically because we saw that people are taking that product and started to use it in different ways. And we saw that people are starting to use it in a commerce way even more. So we are taking on Shopify and those businesses in that area. Also, the cover page is a new thing. Cover pages are mostly one-page websites that offer people to make smaller sites like business cards and stuff like that. While the web pages are basically the blogs and the portfolios that we're going to build. But yeah, mostly of the businesses are smaller businesses. Sometimes they're a little bit bigger, but mostly it's for end users that don't need to get into the expensive design just to have smaller web pages.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the role of development as you're designing. I know sometimes, like in spending a lot of time in polishing a design, you might end up something that's very hard or inefficient to implement. Also, bringing developers in too early and excessive prototyping can lead to a lot of cost, in the sense that you're taking up a developer's time instead of actually producing the final product. I was wondering how Squarespace kind of balances development and kind of when they bring development into the design process, and what role at each stage the developer plays.
Yeah, and we have a lot of problems with it because, as you said, we sometimes do iterations during the development phase. That's really, really costly. But then we are now trying to figure out how to bring developers even more in the early stages, so we don't end up doing those iterations during that development phase. And I think that developers have a good understanding of UX. So we are trying to bring them while we do prototypes and wireframes, because they are all app users. They are all familiar with the product, and we feel they bring a real lot of value. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like 2 months of their time, but it can be a day or two just to review the stuff that we are doing and just to comment on it. Also, we use a lot of InVision with the prototype that's shared on, and they can always comment the changes that we are doing as we move along.
Is there a tool that you found that's particularly well suited to kind of that developer feedback? I know some of the times, like, we'll produce designs and then it's it's an iterative process as you're kind of like building design, learning more about kind of the technical impact. And so it's kind of a conversation that can happen. Yep. Do you have a good tool that kind of captures that conversation in the design as it evolves?
Well, I think that there is no like only one tool. We use, I think, like 6, 7 tools. We tried Marvel, which we're trying InVision for communication and showing the layouts. We use a lot of prototyping tools to show developers the animations, like After Effects, Flash, and Proto.io and different tools. Now there's multiple tools of which you can prototype animations. So we try to use a different tool every time that we do a new project, just to test them. But I mean, there's a lot of tools, and just one, I don't know if it could work just on one.
I was just wondering if you had any recommendations. Like,
Oh yeah, definitely use InVision, although InVision now it's started to become even more complicated, and we'll see how that ends up. But we're still waiting about some stuff that's gonna turn around. Like there's some stuff that Adobe is doing, and also InVision is doing even more. So we'll see how that ends up. But we're now focused on InVision mostly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrej. Please.
Thank you.